So welcome to this session on Maths Intermediate Phase, tips and tricks with the sharp calculators. We're going to use both the ELW 535 SA as well as the S25. So depending on what grade you're teaching and how comfortable you really are with using calculators in your class and how you feel your students benefit from them would depend on which calculator you recommend. So here's our plan of action for this evening. I'm not going to obviously talk through them all now because we will go through them throughout the workshop. So let's jump right in. So the EL535 was designed with the CAPS curriculum in mind. It's got 422 different functions. If your students are buying them in primary school, they can use the same calculator until they reach matric and even in university, depending on what kind of university studies they do. The S25 is a lovely junior quiz calculator, so it has a mental maths practice feature. I'll show you that in a little bit. It also has 10 digits, not the standard 8-digit, and it's really lovely for your basics. So I recommend it actually for grade 3 to 5 students, with grade 6 students starting on the W535 SA calculator. Here is a whole list of worksheets that, a whole list of websites or links that you can click on and use to get free worksheets from. What I haven't added here and what I should have added is twinkle.co.za. So I'll pop that into the chat function if you can see that. So it's just www.twinkle.co.za, and that has got worksheets from grade R to grade 9. So it's perfect for intermediate phase. And their subscription fee is just 39 Rand a month. So it's very reasonable for most teachers. If you are a student teacher in your final practical year and you're doing your practical now, please contact me. Twinkle is running a promotion where you can have a free trial period for 1 term, which is really nice. So that will help you with prepping for your classes and your practical as well. Okay, so the 535 has lots of different buttons. So some of the important ones is obviously your on button. Your orange button over here is your second function button, and that just activates orange functions on your calculator. So we'll actually use it to activate a dice later on. Your alpha button activates your blue keys. Your mode button gives you the different modes. So whether you want to go to do mental maths or whether you want to go to the table mode, which we'll discuss in a second. Then underneath mode is a button that says BS. And BS stands for backspace. So that means if you want to delete something, you would press the backspace button. Change is a wonderful button, particularly for grade 6 and 7, when we convert between decimals and common fractions. And then, of course, your equals button, which gives you the solution. Now, if we look at the S25, you can see it's quite a bit more simple. It does have a solar panel, so your battery should last a very long time, which is great. You've also got these white buttons, and these activate your drill mode function. Your clear all and clear previous. Clear, so CA means to clear everything. So whereas CCE means just to clear the last thing that you did. So if you made a mistake and you've done a long sum, use the CCE button, not the CA button. You do have a pi button, and basically it just has a, word has escaped me, a constant value of 3.14. So not more than that, which is what we would use for pi. But for grade, for the South African grade 4 to 6 syllabus, it's not necessary for us. You've also got the integer button, which is relevant for grade 7 students. And then, of course, your percentage button and your equals button. Right, so there are 4 different modes on the 535, your normal, stat, table, and drill. Normal does things like fractions, decimals. It's got a random function. So it's really quite cool. Then, of course, stats, which I'm not going to cover today because it's not relevant to grade 4 to 6. And then, of course, table mode. So in high school, we use this for functions, but you can use it to find factor pairs of number. You can also use it to find multiples of number. So I'll show you how to do that as well. But let's start with the drill mode, and that is mental maths. So we're going to set up the drill mode. So on your S25, what you would do is press your Q button first, and Q asks you how many questions. So do you want to do 25, 50, or 100 questions? Then the button next to Q says plus, minus, times, divide, and that it allows you to choose between addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, or all 4 of them together. So depending on the level of your student, and you can see the parameters for the different sums that you would be asked to complete. So the other thing that's nice is that you also have something called a times table, or on the S25, I call them counting ins, because what happens is the calculator is going to ask you to choose what you would like to count in. So you use your times table button, and then you can choose, do I want to count in 5s or 7s or whatever. Once you've pressed that and you press equal, you'll see it says 7 times 1. And then what it does is just says 7 times 1, 7 times 2, 7 times 3. And the learner would type in 7, 14, 21, and so on. All right, great. So I'm going to show you how to do this on the 535. Unfortunately, I don't have a simulator for the S25. But it works in a very similar way. So let's start with counting ins. So I'll use one for table. And you can see when I do counting ins on the 535, I would just use my arrow key to select. So if we also did 7 times table and we did serial, so this is exactly like the counting in on the S25. This is what it would look like on the S25, except that it would be a single question on your screen and not 3 questions at the same time. Okay, then what you'll see is if you make a mistake, it's going to mark it wrong and repeat the question over again for you. Okay, and it's very patient. It's going to keep asking until you get the question right. Now, there's no point in a student repeating something 5 times, because at that stage, they're just guessing. Okay, so you can ask the calculator for help by leaving your answer space blank and just pressing equals, and then it will show you the answer and give you the next question. So you lose a mark for that, essentially. So right at the end, I'm not going to answer all of these. You'll be bored. You'll get something that says press enter, and if you press equals, it will show you your marks, which was 4 out of 12, or 33%. Now, if we do the math side of drill, you also have 25, 50, or 100 questions, just like the S25. And again, your parameters are the same. You can choose plus, minus, times, divide, all 4 of them. And again, the calculator generates random maths questions between those parameters. And you type in answer, press equals, you get a tick if it's right. And if it's wrong, it marks it wrong and repeats the question again. Again, you can ask the calculator for help by leaving the space blank and just pressing equals, and then it will show you what the answer is. At the end, you will also see your mark and your percentage. I'm not going to go through it now because you know exactly what it looks like, so it's fine. It's all here in this presentation, so I will email this presentation to you and you can download it and use it for future reference. I'll send it as a PDF and not as a PowerPoint, otherwise it would be too big to use. Okay, so let's find multiples of a number. So say, for example, we would like to find the multiples of 7. So we're going to press mode and we're going to choose 2 for table. Okay, then we type in 7 and all we do is multiply the 7 with an X. So we're going to press your RCL button twice and that will make an X for you. Okay, Then very simply, you just press equals until you get to a table. And here we can see all the multiples. So 0 times 7 is 0, 1 times 7 is 7, 2 times 7 is 14, 3 times 7 is 21, and so on and so forth. What's really nice here is your table is unlimited. So you really can find all the multiples if that's something that you want to do. You can also find factor pairs of a number using table mode. So let's go back here. And I'm just going to press on twice. That just clears away the function. So say, for example, we wanted the factor pairs of 120. We would then type in 120 and we would then press our fraction button and then press RCL twice to make an X. So here we're dividing 120 by a value, and again, equals, 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 equals. And anything divided by 0 is undefined, which is where the striped line comes from. So in grade 10, we call the striped line an asymptote. But until then, we call this undefined. So it's a very good way to explain to your students that anything divided by 0 is undefined, and it gives us this undefined line that we'll later name an asymptote. Then, of course, your factor pairs are all here as well. So 1 and 120, 2 and 60, 3 and 40, 4 and 30, 5 and 24, 6 and 20, 7 and 17,14. So we can see 7 is not a factor because it has a decimal answer or a remainder. 8 and 15, 9 is not a factor, 10 and 12, 11 is not a factor, and then we have 12 and 10. So we can see that they've switched around, and we now know that we have found all of our factor pairs. All right. Any questions so far? We all good? Great, fantastic. Okay, so prime factors we sort of learn about in grade 6, where we break down the number into using our ladder method or tree method. However, you can check that your answer is correct by using the prime factorization function on your calculator. So to do that, you just type in a number you want the prime factors of, press equals, and then press second function and your EXP button. And that will show us all of the prime factors of 120. Now, if you have a number that is a prime number and you try to find prime factors of it, you'll see here that there's a little dot behind the 61. And when we press second function fact, you'll see that the dot goes away. And that just shows that this is in fact a prime number because there's only one factor, which is the definition of prime numbers. Sorry. All right, cool. So we can also do prime factors. Sorry, we can also do fractions here. So here we've got, I'm going to show you just the different ways to input fractions. So again, in normal mode, we can input fractions in 2 ways. And this is just proper fractions. So the first way is to first press your fraction button and then to type in your numerator, press down and then type in your denominator. Press your right arrow key and then say plus. And then for the second way, you can type in your numerator first and then press your fraction key and then type in your denominator. So both ways work, and they're very dependent on what you're comfortable with. So the second method is just quicker, but the first method is better in terms of outlining exactly what you need to do. Okay. Now, of course, I've just put in a random function here. You can change it, and it will give you your decimal and your improper fraction as well. So for converting between mixed decimal and fraction, it's really quite handy. Now, you can also do adding mixed fractions or inputting mixed fractions as well, there are also two methods for that. The first is to type in your whole number and then press second function and your fraction button. And what that does is it just glues the fraction onto your whole number, and then you would just type in your fraction. Okay. The second way is to then press your fraction button first, and then to move the cursor in front of the fraction, add a whole number, and then go back and fill in the rest of your fraction. So again, both ways work. It's up to you what you feel comfortable with and what you want to do. And of course, you can again change the way that your answer looks to get to the mixed or improper or decimal fractions as well. Great. So finding a fraction of a whole is quite easy. We know that of means times. So if we had 3/5, again, you can press either the fraction button first or the 3 and then the fraction. It's up to you. 3/5 of is times, and then you just put in your whole number and it will do that calculation for you. Very quick and easy to do. Again, it is a checking mechanism. Okay, so this is nice. Percentages, we talk about percentages in grade 6 and converting between them, but firstly you have to find a percentage using a fraction. So in my example, we've got 20 over 35. So we can say 20 over 35, and then you multiply by 100 and you say equals, and you can just change it, and that will give you 57.14%. So it's very easy to do percentages. Doesn't look like I've added the shortcut for class marks, which I really do want to show you. So let me go back here and show you this awesome trick. So when you are doing conversions for your class marks, say for example, you set up a project, it's out of 100, and you need to convert that down into a total out of 30, right? So at the top, you would put where you're going to, which is 30. At the bottom, you put the total that your test is out of, which is, or your project is out of, which is 100. And then you just multiply it by your first student's mark. So your first student got 56 out of 100, which means that they got 16.8 out of 30. Now for your next student, instead of typing this whole long thing in, what you can do is just type in the next mark. So the next student got 87 out of 100. So you just type in 87 and press equals, and it will give you 26.1 out of 30. Your next student got 63 and equals, so they got 18.9. So it's very, very easy and quick to do mark conversions on the calculator as well. Now, of course, you can also convert your fractions to decimals, and we've seen that already with the change button. So it's as simple as making sure you press the on button first and then typing in your fraction and pressing equals, and then changing your fraction to a decimal. Awesome. You also have recurring decimals, so this is handy for grade 6 and 7. So what you can do is you can actually set up the calculator. So you would press setup, choose, press your down arrow key, choose 5 for recurring decimal, and then simply turn your recurring decimal on. Okay, and so what happens now is when you change it, it will show you a recurring format. In other words, the decimal parts that are repeating, as well as the 9 decimal places that you would normally get on a calculator. Okay, and what's nice is once you've turned that on, you don't have to turn it off again or turn it on again every time you want to find a recurring decimal. It stays on until you reset the calculator. If you don't have a recurring decimal, that format will obviously not show up. Any questions so far? We're all still fabulous. Great. Okay. So let's talk through a number pattern. So we can use both the 535 and the S25 to create a number pattern. Okay, so on the 535, the way that we were doing with the class marks, your addend, or the part that you add second, is what becomes the constant addition. Okay, so we have 3 plus 5, and we say equals, and then plus 5 to get what looks like answer plus 5, and equals. And then if you keep pressing equals here, it will keep adding the 5 for you. Now, we can also do this with the S25. So this is a video that I'm just going to play for you. And what it does is if you subtract 5 and then keep pressing equals, so you don't have to do that second plus or minus 5. It will automatically do it for you as well. You can also do division and then just keep pressing equals, and it will also continue to do that division for you as well. I'm sorry about the shaky quality of the video. It's very hard to do button pushes plus for myself at the same time. You can also do a constant ratio. So on the 535, you can do, for example, 3 times 2 equals, and then again times 2 equals, and then just equals, equals, equals. So with the 535, you do need to repeat that multiplication by 2. However, with the S25, your multiplication, or the thing that you're multiplying by with a constant, is the thing in front. So you'll see now it will become 50. So here the order is switched around on the S25. And again, it's just equals, 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 equals to create that pattern. Now, in grade 4, we start looking at flow diagrams, and we have input and output values. And we can actually use the calculator to create an input or output table or of values. So here we're going to go to table mode, and what we would do is just create a formula or a number sentence where we use x as our block, and let's say plus 2 there. So basically we're starting at 2 and adding 10 to whatever our input is, and then pressing equals, 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 equals. And you can see if I input 1, my answer will be 12, because 1 times 10 is 10, plus 2 is 12, 2 times 10 is 20, plus 2 is 22, and here's your entire table of inputs and output values. So a really nice way to use the calculator to explore number patterns and inputs and output values. Great. Any questions yet? Are we still happy, happy, happy? Okay, great, fantastic. All right, so time calculations, very nice function on the 535. Again, it is a checking mechanism. I honestly don't know if I would teach my grade 6 students this. But, you know, for those who struggle and who want to just check that their answers are correct, they can't use the calculator in an exam anyway. Most schools don't allow it. So it is nice for them to go home and check that they're getting their homework right, or get immediate feedback by using this method. So if you have 582 minutes, okay, and you want to know how many hours that is, what you do is you put a 0 in the hours placeholder, press your DMS button, and then type in 582 and just press equals, and it will give you 9 hours and 42 minutes. Now, if I press second function and DMS, it will convert those 9 hours and 42 minutes into a fraction, or into a mixed number fraction, or a decimal, depending on what I change it to. So it's a very nice function to have for checking your own work, as, oh, trust me, I have used it. Then, of course, you've also got the Susie train station. So Susie gets on the train at 9:45. She gets off at 12:22. How long was she on the train for? So we type in 12, then we press DMS and 22 for the minutes, so hours and minutes, minus 9 for the hours, DMS, 45 for the minutes, and equals, and we get 2 hours and 37 minutes that Susie spent on the train. And again, you can change it by saying second function BMS to give us a fraction, which we can see is 37 over 60, which means that 37 doesn't simplify into 60 at all. And we can just try and change that into decimals as well. Cool. We really have flown through here. This is the last section. So far, still all good. No questions. Okay, great, fantastic. Probability. So what's really nice is you actually have a whole set of random functions on your calculator that you can use in your classroom when you teach probability. Now, when we teach probability, we normally get the students to bring a dice, or we have a dice if we're lucky enough to have dice in our classrooms, or we make a dice using nets so that we can, go across both sets of topics. Either way, it does tend to cause a lot of chaos. So we actually do have a dice on the calculator, and you can just press 1 to access the dice, and then press equals to roll the dice. And you'll see it generates random numbers between 1 and 6. Every student's calculator will be different, so they won't be generating the same set of numbers. So it really is like rolling a dice with it. So what's nice here is if your students have the calculator, they can all roll the dice together, and then you can count how many students have 6 or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. And then you can create a tally table, and you can do this a couple of times. And then you can look at how the more times you roll the dice, the closer the probability or the frequency of the rolls becomes like the theoretical probability is. You've also got a coin. So here it's number 2, and it's a math coin. So instead of heads and tails, it's going to generate zeros and ones. So we'll just press equals, and you'll see that it just gives you zeros and ones. Now, a fun game that you can play with your students is I use my simulator, and I'll show you how to download it in a minute. And then ask them to choose numbers between 1 and 6, and they have to show me their hands and the number of fingers, or basically the number that they've chosen with their hands. If they pick the same number that I've chosen, they can stand up, and then we do the same thing. Now, with a dice, this normally lasts 3 rounds, and then all the students are out, and you're like, oh man, create the drama. And then of course you can do this with a coin, and this obviously takes a lot longer, because the chances of getting heads or tails correct, or 0 or 1, is much higher than the chance of choosing one number out of 6 correct, because you've got 6 options versus 2 options with the coin. So this is a great introduction to the idea of the size of probability and where your odds are better for winning a game as well. Now, the other 2 functions that you have, Melissa, if you've got a question, please pop it into the Q&A function for us. I'll pause here. So I'll just go on to the other functions here with the random. So random just does random decimals between 0 and 1 to 3 decimal places. So if I roll that, you can see it actually gives it to you as a fraction. So you just have to change it. What's really nice here is that you can use this for practicing rounding off to 2 decimal places and 1 decimal place, and of course to whole numbers as well. Then the last random function that you have on the calculator is actually random integer. And this allows you to choose to generate numbers between any 2 numbers that you choose. So for example, if we wanted to simulate rolling 2 dice, and that's awesome. I like that it's a half-half option. Very cool. Sorry, train of thoughts. Okay, so if you wanted to simulate, for example, rolling 2 dice and then adding the sum together. So the lowest sum you would have is 1 plus 1, which is 2. And the highest sum you'd have is 12 for 6 plus 6. And then if you press equals, it will give you the say in inverted commas, the sums of the various 2 dice rolls. And you can do this with anything. So I often play the lottery with my students. So let me just show you from all the steps again. So second function, 7, then 3 for RNs. And what I'll do is I'll ask them to write down 6 numbers between 1 and 52 on a piece of paper. Then they switch their piece of paper with the friend sitting next to them. And then they circle the numbers that I display on my calculator here. And we see if anyone will actually win the lottery. It's a great way to introduce, again, the probability of, the probability of winning the lottery and what your chances actually are, which is like 1 in 11 billion of getting the numbers correct. So that's a really fun way to introduce probability and a real life example of using it. Okay. Fantastic, guys. Thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate you watching this. If you are watching on YouTube and you have any questions, please pop your questions into the comments and we will answer them as soon as we can.